All right, let's get to the NBA Finals. The reason that we all do this, Game 7. Unfortunately, on one of the first plays of the game yesterday, Tyrese Haliburton tore his Achilles. We got the official news of that being the injury this morning from Shams, which was just very unfortunate. He'd been playing on a strained calf for 2.5 games now. I think it started with calf tightness, then it was like officially a strain in game 5, and then early in game 7, he just kinda goes down as clear non-contact injury, very similar to, um, how you saw it with Jason Tatum in round 2, and you just knew what happened even before he went down. Will, were you watching this live, by the way?
Yes, I was. I was back from my camping trip and ready to watch. Man, I was like ready for a great game 7 and
Yeah, it
Pacers were
started
kind
off
of
like,
like,
okay, everybody's nervous, it's gonna be a close one, gonna be a nail biter. Hallie was making shots. He'd gone like 3 of 4 from
yeah,
3
he had those
right before
three
then.
threes and I was like
Yeah.
really excited. And I was like, hey, this could be a game, like classic game 7. And then I just thought Hallie, like on first glance, was pounding the floor because he was mad he turned the ball over and was like, damn. But then obviously when they showed the close up replay, we all realized what
Oh,
happened.
I
And
didn't think he was
yeah.
pounding the ground because of that. I was, like, frustrated with him because Shay ran the other way. I'm like, "Come on, Hallie." Then they showed the replay of what happened, and before he even hit the ground on the replay, I was like, "Oh." They didn't even it was before it was the replay of, like, here's the turnover, and then yeah, and everyone just knew then. He clearly knew then because he was, like, on the ground pounding the ground, like, I hate how many times they replay these things too, 'cause it's like, "Okay, I got it." Like, I don't need to see this from 6 different angles. Um,
I know they replayed it so many times.
so they always do this too. Really shitty way to end such a special run through the playoffs. Like, they had taken one of the best teams of all time analytically to 7 games in the NBA Finals, which was the furthest that that franchise had gone since the NBA-ABA merger. Um It was just a really it's a really tough situation for Pacers fans, facing like, that's the worst possible way that game 7 could have gone,
I can't believe
um,
it.
and it stood in such stark contrast to, like, the rest of the run. Like, it's one thing to lose the game, um, it's one thing for Halliburton to have, not played and all that, and I get it, like, guys wanna be there for their guys, he wants to play. He played well in the last game, right? And they made it through, and he looked okay, but it's one of those things where it's like, it could just give out at any point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the really tough thing about these
Mm.
tissue injuries for professional athletes, like, especially tissue injuries because they're so random. Soft
Yeah.
tissue injuries, that is.
Santa Cruz says Toppin said the players couldn't focus. I did
Oh,
think
it was
like,
clear both sides, like,
yeah,
had trouble refocusing after Halliburton left the game because this happened, like, middle of the 1st quarter.
I thought it was a really interesting development. I mean, it's not anything you want to happen. I was so heartbroken for Pacers fans. You go from like possibly winning a game 7 and winning the championship to now likely losing, and then which they did, and then he's going to be out all next season. It's just like I mean, I can only relate to it when like Jamal went down with the ACL, though we weren't in a game 7 of the finals when that happened, but it was like on the
Yeah,
cusp of maybe going on a run. But yeah, it's brutal. I did
yeah.
think the Pacers responded really well after that, but I thought OKC was probably like unsure how to react because you're probably gonna win.
The crowd was taken completely out of it for the rest of
Yeah.
the half, I thought,
Yeah.
too, because they were like,
I think the crowd
like,
learned the
"How should
lesson
we
from
react?"
they learned the lesson from the Raptors and the whole KD thing where like some Raptors fans were cheering when KD tore his Achilles. Not that they were cheering because of the injury, but they're just realizing like we're probably gonna win the title.
Oh.
And now it's like if you see a guy go down like that in the
Do you
finals,
remember
just
which
don't
game that
cheer.
happened in, by the way?
I
Katie tearing his
don't.
Achilles?
It might have been it might have been like the closeout game to win the championship for the Raptors, and that's why like Katie came back because it was like it wasn't a game 7, but it was like an
Because he
elimination
had the
game.
calf, and then he played in the game,
He
and
was like
that's where he
coming
tore the
back, I think,
Achilles.
because they were on the verge of elimination. Then when he went down, I think everyone in the building was like, "Oh shit, we're gonna win the title." And there was a whole discourse around that. And I think OKC fans probably, although how do OKC fans know about that? Like they've never watched the NBA before last season, so I don't
I
know.
mean, I don't know, people tell them, or I think honestly, like, to me, like, there's also, like, the natural reaction in the moment, or it could have been, like, one section of the crowd had that reaction, and then everyone sort of followed. They're like, "Oh, shit, like, this is." You don't wanna be that one guy that's, like, cheering, as, this dude that gave not just the Pacers, but gave us as NBA fans one of the best, just funnest NBA finals runs to watch, like whether they won or not. And they again were once you get to a game 7, like who knows what can happen. Um yeah, it was really tough. I'm thinking about how this affects the Eastern Conference next season. Obviously, Halliburton, Dame, and Jason Tatum are all out next season with Achilles tears. All these guys wear number 0, by the way, which was pointed out to me by Mile High Aki, I think, on Twitter. Um, but will the East outdo itself next season in terms of the reputation that we have for the Eastern Conference next year with all these important stars to good teams? Like, these are all teams that you could see making, at least round 2 to the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, the Bucks haven't with Dame yet, but, like, they have the talent too if he's healthy kind of thing.
Are they gonna like what is your definition of will they outdo themselves?
Like, is
Because
this gonna be one of the worst Eastern
oh,
Conference
that's what you
seasons that
mean.
we've seen in a very long time?
Yes, yes, because I was like, outdo themselves. I'm like, they're gonna be way worse. Yeah, no, I think they're gonna
Yeah.
be this is like a huge opening for the Knicks, I feel like.
Yeah.
Celtics are out of it, Pacers are probably out of it. I don't know what move the Heat might make, but they just missed out on KD. Yeah, it's like wide open for the Knicks, but the Bucks are looking pretty sad, but Giannis may be able to stay another season and like make a Western Conference Finals before he loses again. Who knows?
So somebody was telling me that I'm underestimating the Don't Tell Santa Cruz says LaMelo Ball can finally win a ring. Um,
Hey, the
sure.
Magic.
From one of those claw
It's time for the
machines, sure.
Magic.
Uh, it's one thing to win the East, it's a completely different thing to win the title, as we've seen.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any
Um,
East team winning the title,
but
but
some people do think that I'm underestimating the Pacers and their ability to stay in it next season. Now, we talked about this with Jason Tatum. He could be coming back next season off an Achilles tear. Obviously, Halliburton's happens like a month or so later, so that's a little less time. So it's a little less likely that he'd come back before the end of the season. But you never know with these things. It's listed as a 7 to 18-month recovery, and usually guys are back within a year of the injury in terms of, like, not, like, fully back to themselves, but, like, they can be back on the floor and, like, they've been rehabbing, they're back, on the court. Um, so who knows? But assuming Halliburton is out for the entirety of at least the regular season, what do you think is the highest the Pacers could finish in the Eastern Conference standings? Especially, like, it's the Eastern Conference, all these other teams are injured too. Who's their competition in your eyes?
like I think so. I Magic and Knicks are like up there because they are solid and have health, and the Knicks are still going to be good. I think the Magic are going to be good with Bane. Celtics can still get hot. I think the Celtics are going to be their competition because they still are pretty deep, but without Tatum, it's like what can you really expect unless they intentionally tank or something? Um,
Look, I was hoping that what would happen is that we'd find out that Josh was trying to poach Brad Stevens this whole time, and Brad just needed to get some ducks in a row for the summer salary dumps to get that team under the second apron this summer before he came over to Denver. That's not happening. Um, but I think the Celtics are a smartly run organization. Whether that means they're going to tank, I don't know. Obviously, Tatum is out for most, if not the entire season. Jalen Brown he's having meniscus surgery this summer, so we don't know what kind of state he's going to be in. And on top of that, they're probably gonna move off of at least one of Drew Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis this summer. So, I don't know how many games does a Derek White-led team win? Um, it is the Eastern Conference,
It's
but
just so hard to predict because
yeah.
even like we just saw the 8 seed Heat go all the way, and it's like the seeding
Oh, in
swings so
2023,
much.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah, but
like,
the Eastern Conference sucked that
yeah,
year, even by my
well,
standards.
now
I
look
mean,
at
yeah,
how.
no, that's fair, that's fair,
So you're
that's
like
fair,
from
that's
fourth
fair.
to eighth, they could be in the mix or not. Maybe they'll decide to tank. Maybe they'll make some. Maybe they'll trade Miles Turner. I don't know.
For the I mean, he's coming up on an extension, so I think they were gonna extend Miles. Does this Haliburton news change that? I don't know.
He
That's a
didn't
good
have a great
question.
showing in the finals. Vincent says Hallie is very important to the team's offense. Neesmith shot 25% from three without Hallie, 53% with him. Toppin's terrible without him. I mean, it's a good point. I think while the Pacers, because the East is weak, can still get in the playoffs, the idea that like they'll just like be right there is
Yeah.
is crazy. Like Halliburton's way too good and operates
I
so much
mean,
of the
the
offense.
you just need to make top 10,
Yeah.
technically.
No, you
That's
can
all
make the
that and it's
playoffs.
the Eastern Conference. That's all I'm talking about here.
You can make the
I think
playoffs.
that theoretically, if Halliburton were slated to come back in, like, late February, I don't know, they were below 500 in December and finished the 4 seed, Will, like, it's and the East wasn't as bad as it's gonna be next year. So, we'll see. I think it's important that they're gonna be missing their lead creator, lead ball handler, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Pascal was making those terrible Raptors teams, like, right on the cusp of the play-in every single year too. So, you just never know. Um, I think they're probably gonna finish closer to, like, 7th,
Hmm.
6th or 7th, I think is their ceiling, and that is more like, that's credit to them, but it's more like I just look so poorly on the rest of the Eastern Conference.
And I just never know what to make of the Heat either. Like they could be
Yeah.
worse or better. Are they going to be around the same level of the Pacers?
Well, Terry Rozier is still on that team, so just a couple more things on the implications of this OKC title. The regular season matters. The fact that Oklahoma City had home court in the finals mattered to them, because they were a team that performed so wildly differently at home versus on the road. We saw in that pivotal game 4 that they did pull out, but the Pacers, they're looking back on it, they should have won it. The Nuggets looking at that game 4, they're like, we should have won, we were up, we should have won it, but they didn't. And then there was no other opportunity after that. The Thunder needed that margin for error for them as a young team, and they had it because they took the regular season extremely seriously, and did so early to the point where they could rest guys with like 2 weeks left in the season and still have, like, such a large lead on everybody. Um, there's this, there's the 40 before 20 rule that, like, title teams, with the exception of, I think, the 95 Rockets. I can't remember if the 96 Rockets also fell into this. Maybe it was the other way around. Phil Jackson's rule that you have to win 40 games before you lose 20 in the regular season, and be taken, seriously as like a title contender. Denver obviously did not get to that this year. I think the Bucks loss was our 20th loss of the season, the one in Milwaukee, which is annoying. The other rule that Matt Moore has is you got to be a top 3 seed, because only like 4 ever even have won the finals. It might be only 3 teams ever, non-top 3 seeds have, won the NBA title, including, of course, the both the 95 and the 96 Rockets, I believe. Um, yeah, then I have my note on home court. OKC was only 5-5 on the road, and we saw, like, in game 6, they were like, "Ugh, we just wanna get back home, and then we'll finish these guys off," right? That's the luxury that you get to have if you have home court advantage. Obviously, the Nuggets didn't take advantage of that in 2024, when they lost to the Timberwolves, and they did take care of it this year, so that was actually nice, because that was their first, home Game 7 win of the Jokic era, I believe, right? Yeah. Um, last note here, SGA, one of very few players to win both MVP and Finals MVP in the same season. He broke the curse. It hasn't happened since Steph, which I mean, I just don't know that that's gonna happen again. One of the things that we'll get to this when we do our playoff takeaways, but a lot of people are talking about how high SGA's usage was. And it's like, yeah, he did have 34% usage, which I think is the highest for a champion in NBA history for like their top player. And the second is literally, I think, MJ in 96. But their offense sucked. Like the reason they were able to do it is because they were the best defense in 2 generations. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on
I
that?
was wondering your thoughts on the usage rate because it can build like a pretty interesting case for him being such
Yeah.
like a pivotal part of the offense. But I just find it funny that he wins the final MVP in a closeout game with that stat line, even though it was like Hallie was out. So, it was the pressure was a little bit off of
I
the
mean, I
team,
don't think
but
the
you still had to
closeout
execute.
game was what sealed his Finals
No, it
MVP. I
wasn't.
think it was, like,
It
digging
obviously
deep
wasn't
at
because
the
look at
end of
that
game
stat line.
4 because that was the game where it's like, I think OKC loses the series if they lose game 4.
Definitely. Yeah, that was the
Um,
pivotal one.
and then he'd
Um,
been playing well up until that point too,
Like, I
so
think there were a lot of players that, like Caruso, for example, super impactful in terms of what he brought. And
yeah.
like J Dub had his like impactful moments here and there. It's just none of them like are able to get to that point to where you could like comfortably give them finals MVP. So I don't think like anyone got robbed in that front as much as I don't
No,
like
no,
SGA.
I don't think so either.
Um, but
I
like
mean,
I
if anything, like, we were talking about the possibility of a J-Dub Finals MVP, and I was like, SGA would have to play poorly in both of the last 2 games, and J-Dub would have to play basically like he did in game 5. And I didn't see that happening because of how inconsistent he had been, but also I'm just like, Shay's gonna have the ball, Shay's gonna figure it out.
yeah.
Um,
This is why I was
yeah.
fighting so much in the season to not like I affect anything, but just wanting people to be on the Jokic MVP train, which I know fans and such can't convince voters to vote Jokic. But I figured if SGA wins MVP, he's going to win final MVP at the same time. And I know that doesn't happen a lot, at least not since Steph. So now there's this historical element to this season for him specifically. And it just annoys me because I do think OKC is a really, really good team like the way Wallace was hitting threes last night, Caruso can get hot and be 100% from threes in a single game, like on 3 attempts. That mind you, but they like have some firepower. Like I know their offense can get stagnant and doesn't like look the same or flow in comparison to many other
No, like,
teams, especially
their offense
Indy.
gets really their
Yeah,
offense does get stagnant. It was stagnant last night too. They just
yeah,
happened to make their threes because they were at home, like
yeah. So like that happens,
but
and Dort had that
that's not
crazy
an offense
three.
that you, like, rely on.
No, but they had that timely shooting. They did. I love
Yeah,
to
they
bring that
had the
up now.
timely shooting at home, right?
Yeah. Like they have so
We
many
did not
players
have
on that
timely
team.
shooting at home in this playoffs. The Nuggets were not shooting well at home or on the road.
Yeah, like
Except Russ on his catch and shoots when he took them, right? When he took his open shots, that was, like, really the one player,
yeah.
ironically.
And obviously, you
But
know
that's
that
why I
I
focus less on that aspect of the offense.
sure. Yeah, if you're looking for the most reliable kind of offense, you're gonna have to rely on someone like SGA. And like I was frustrated with the Pacers defense while I thought they were like trying as hard as they could in that first quarter. I just and like the score was relatively low. Um SGA was just making like a lot of his mid-range shots in that
Yeah,
first quarter. It fell off, but
he was just making everything until late.
yeah.
Like, he was
Yeah.
gassed and they were up big, so I was
Yeah.
like,
So
"This
just
doesn't matter."
right.
He was just like, "Get a shot up, don't turn the ball over." That's, like, their philosophy is, like,
I would
create
have
something, don't turn the ball over.
Would have loved to see if it was closer, if how he fared. Like I kind of feel like he would have just like kept his foot on the gas and been able to do it considering the circumstance because he just like is automatic. Like as much as I hate him, I didn't agree he should win MVP. I agree he probably should win Finals MVP. But there you go, a person winning MVP and Finals MVP in the same year, which a lot of Nuggets fans have this idea that we'll never win the Finals if Jokic has to win MVP. If Jokic wins MVP because he had to expend so much energy in the regular season that we're not going to have as much success on a run because Jokic is going to be gassed. But
It's
there it
probably
is.
true just because of the way that the Nuggets
Yeah,
are constructed. The
exactly. And
Thunder are
OK's
constructed in such a way that, like, SGA can win MVP and not have expended as much energy as it would have taken for Jokic to do what it would have taken to win MVP, and when you look at the season that he had, the fact that he didn't win MVP is like, well, like, shit, like, there's nothing else that he could possibly have done, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
that's my big point is I'm like I feel like there's a little bit of a give like wanting their cake and eating it too with SJ where he gets so much credit for everything the Thunder do, but at the same time, I think they're like a stacked ass team. Granted, like you do need an MVP level player to
you
be
need
a
an
special
MVP.
team.
That's my so, you know
So
what?
it's like I get it.
I'll just break what I said earlier and just like go to one of the real or fakes that we're gonna save for a future show. But I asked, can you win a title with heliocentric basketball? My answer is real because obviously OKC just did it. All it took was for them to be the best defense in two like NBA generations since at least the Bad Boys Pistons, not the Bad Boys, but the '05 Pistons, let's say. Since at least that, because you can argue that they're even better than that relative to the rest of the league in terms of being that good of a defense, and that really just elevated in the playoffs because of the way that they play being elevated with playoff officiating and all of that stuff. So it's like, yeah, you can win a title with heliocentric basketball, and it's one of the things that I've heard people sort of talk about with like, this is the way that you should build around Trey Young. This is the way that the Sixers tried to build around Allen Iverson is like, you get buckets, we'll take care of everything else. But that is really, really hard to do when the main guy isn't either brutally efficient or like, and part of it, like, okay, I'll include a couple of different points in there. You can be efficient by making buckets, getting to the free throw line, and or not turning the ball over. And you have to be all three of those things at different points in order to be the engine of an offense for a team that is constructed like this. So it's like on one point, like you have to give SGA credit for being able to do all of like they went to game 7 with the Pacers. Right? Like, that's what the margin was. Like, it was like, he had to be that good in order for this formula to work, but obviously, because he was that good, they were able to employ this formula with their roster, and it's like, no other creators. All you guys just, like, do other stuff. J-Dub, if you're good sometimes, it's fine. Other teams need more consistent players around them offensively, they just do. And they're not gonna be as good defensively, and they have to figure out the other stuff. But OKC was, with the exception of a couple of laydown games in these playoffs, good defensively in every single game. So it's like, we just gotta make it close enough for, like, this guy to get us over the top, right? And that's the
Mhm.
formula, but it's like, you have to be such a good defense in order to make that work that I'm like, simultaneously to that, you have to have this guy that has the brutal efficiency in 3 different ways, maybe not all in the same game, because obviously, like, SGA has his inefficient games, but at the same time, he'll either be getting to the line and or not be turning the ball over, or, 2 out of the 3 in a given game, and that's, like, good enough for the guy that's the lead creator on a team like this. Um and you have to be, like, at the same time, the best defense in 2 generations, and I think that's, like, yes, theoretically you can, and literally it just happened, but I don't think that's necessarily a formula that other teams should try to replicate unless they can somehow replicate those 2 extremes in terms of what kind of player your best player is and, like, how good they can be at those things, like, real like, MVP caliber at those things. And an extremely good defense, which is part of my problem with Orlando's formula with this, because I'm like, this offense need like, you're not Paolo could reach his 95th percentile outcome and not be a good enough primary creator to make that formula work, even with as good as Orlando's defense can be, because they won't be as good a defense as OKC was, for example.
How much do you weigh the 3-point shooting into heliocentric basketball? Because I would say real with the caveat that you do need people that are going to hit threes around the heliocentric player, which I think OKC did do very well. And I
That's true,
think,
but they also were guys that didn't hit threes, like, throughout this playoff run at the same time. So it's like,
I don't know
if
if it's
we're
just
talking
because
about
I don't know if
Like,
it's
you have to be willing to take them, but yeah, and yeah, hit them, but it's not like I need to see where OKC
yeah,
fell in
that's what I
terms
want to
of
see.
because I think it's easy to feel like because they
Right.
hit threes in certain key moments against you that it was this playoff wide thing with this particular team, but OKC was 13th in three-point shooting among playoff teams out of 16 teams, in terms of percentage, like, efficiency, and then in terms of volume, like, they were middle of the pack, right? And that probably goes up from where they were in the regular season because of how much attention SGA was getting to try and stop him.
It did just
Yeah.
feel like the timing of the shots, or was it DA who talked about Derek Fisher and Robert Horry making those
Yeah.
timely shots? It just felt like Kaysen Wallace and Caruso were those types of players on a championship team where it's just like they just hit the shots when it was like, and like Ludort too, where a team's kind of coming back and they just like hit a stretch of threes, like 3 of 3 in a row. And it was just like, yeah, they had games where they had went cold, but they like strung together the shots enough that like really gave them some breathing room and like to take control of these games. And like I don't know, I like rate their 3 point shooting more heavily than um people might be. I just thought that was like really important, and it just like fits into the whole trend of the league with like these wings who can like the 3 and D full 3 and D team with like one superstar who can initiate and dribble and drive.
Yeah, I just don't think that OKC was really, like, that archetype of team. I think they look like it on paper, but they really weren't. If you look at the numbers, it just kind of feels like it in the moment. They their bread and butter was just SGA save us, and sometimes Jada will also come in. I'm actually curious to see how their offense evolves as Chet and Jada continue to develop. Even how SGA continues to develop. We saw him get more, even like in game 7 of the NBA finals, getting more pick and roll reps with Isaiah Hartenstein that just like never happened in the regular season or rarely did. That was not a part of their offense in large volume, but it was something they went to a lot in game 7 and the Pacers had no answer for it. Especially early in that game. And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
why don't we do this with Chet more?" You know? Like, this is a thing that he probably should be getting some reps on. Some people mad at SGA that he isn't able to set Chet up for easier opportunities. I think all of these players have definitely room to grow, which, as Will mentioned earlier, is definitely scary. For those that have made it this far, we really appreciate you, and you probably have already subscribed, but if you haven't, please hit the subscribe button as well as the like button. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content, and always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.